Hi everyone, and welcome to Criticism's latest Analyst Webinar, Improve the Experience of Your Mobile Transactions. In this webinar over the next 50 minutes or so, we will cover a few specific topics, including how to identify mobile moments to improve customer engagement, the key mobile metrics, including operational and business data to measure, and how to leverage actionable insights to prioritize, troubleshoot, and trend your app's key transaction metrics. We are very pleased to have returning as a featured guest speaker, Jeffrey Hammond, Forrester Research VP and Principal Analyst, and an expert on mobile development, as well as Rob Kwok, Criticism CTO and co-founder. Just some quick housekeeping. All of the lines will be muted during the presentation. We encourage you to type your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll try to get to as many as possible at the end of the presentation. Okay, let's begin. I'm very pleased to introduce Rob Kwok, CTO, co-founder of Criticism. Hi, Rob.
Hey, Tim. Thanks for setting things up. So I just want to start off by giving a little bit of background about Criticism. We're, as you know, our mission is to really accelerate mobile business. Just some quick figures about our company. We're on over 10,000 mobile applications. We operate at an immense scale. We have over 1 billion monthly active users on our platform, and we handle over 50 billion app launches every month, and we operate in over 120 different countries. Andrew and I started the company as mobile app developers, and mobile really is in our DNA. We built a solution for ourselves as app developers, and we operate across all the different platforms for mobile, from iOS, Android NDK, HTML5 to Windows, as well as across a lot of the app development platforms such as Accelerator, Xamarin, and Unity. And our customers are across all the different verticals, from early technology companies, innovators in industries such as Yahoo and LinkedIn, to as well as Fortune 500 companies such as eBay, PayPal, and Nike. So with that, I wanted to introduce to you guys to Jeffrey Hammond. Thanks a lot for happy to have you in the webinar today, and I'd like to turn it over to you, Jeffrey.
Thanks a lot, Rob. I really appreciate you guys having me today. I want to start by decomposing one of the phrases that Tim used, accelerating mobile business, and I want to focus on the first two words as I start my my piece here, accelerating mobile. Now, the nice thing is that I don't think, as folks that are looking at supporting customers, you have to worry that much around accelerating mobile, and let me show you why I think that's the case. The first slide here is an image from Pope Benedict's introduction to the world in 2005, so almost 9 years ago at this point in time. If you look at it, you don't see smartphones at all. You see a couple flip phone cameras, but that's about it. Now, if we go to the next slide and fast forward to 2013, this is the acceleration of mobile. I kind of feel like I'm in a concert and somebody just started to play Freebird and everybody popped their lighters up, but it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. We're past the billion device mark when it comes to smartphones worldwide, well on our way to 2 billion and beyond. So it's really the business part of that phrase, accelerating mobile business, that we need to think about. And when we think about business, business is defined, if nothing, by the transactions between us and our customers. And figuring out how to make that work effectively and how to take the transactions that we may have today and expose them into the mobile world is what developers need to think about. And the way that we see that happening is through what we call mobile moments. The entire transaction may not be exposed on the device or the long-running conversation that you have with your customer. It may actually cross multiple devices. It's omni-channel, and your customers expect to be able to move from device to device and pick up right where they left off and continue to make progress, continue to engage with you and other people like them. So it's these discrete points in the life of a transaction when it makes sense for them to engage you on a mobile smartphone or on a tablet that are the important things to really optimize around, focus in on, and deliver a world-class experience. We call those mobile moments, a point in time when someone pulls out their smartphone or their tablet, and they expect to get exactly what they need right then and there, importantly, within the context of the overall transaction, the overall set of engagements that they have with you. If we move on to the next slide, when you think about these mobile moments, they happen throughout the life cycle of the customer journey. They may happen during the point in time that folks are becoming aware of your products and your services and what you offer. You may manufacture those mobile moments by placing an ad inside a game like Angry Birds, or you might borrow some of their time when they're on the train and they're scanning the latest day's news stories. Those mobile moments expand into the exploration process where they're learning about your products. They're doing their own research. They're deciding whether the value that you present is value that they're interested in. It moves into the buy stage of the relationship where they may actually purchase a product on the mobile device, or they might actually make the purchase at a brick and mortar store, or on their PC at home after they get home or in the office. But it might have been based on the research that they have done on the mobile device. They really don't distinguish between channel. It moves into the use phase where they're trying to work with the product. If it's a connected product like Nike Plus, they may want to use it with their mobile phone. Or if it's a loyalty card, they might want a digital version of that and be able to use that in lieu of having to take out their wallet or fish the card out of a purse and pull it out to show in a store when they're buying a product from you. And it finally moves all the way into the loyalty portion where there's extended customer service, where they become customer advocates for you. Now, this journey might take place entirely within the mobile sphere, but in all likelihood, it's going to cross multiple channels. It's going to need to do so seamlessly, and it's going to need to work with your existing systems that weren't really built for a mobile-first world. So how do you do this? How do you create mobile moments, and how do you make them the best moments for your customer that they possibly can be? If we move on to the next slide, at Forrester, we would recommend that you use a process that we call the idea cycle. It stands for identifying the mobile moments and the context that your customer needs, designing the engagement in that mobile channel, engineering your platforms to be able to provide that information on demand, and being able to analyze the results to make sure that you are optimizing the experience. Now, when I talk to developers and Forrester clients about how they win in the mobile space, a lot of times they come in very much focused on this engineering part, the E. They want to know, well, should we build native applications, or should we do hybrids, or can we do mobile web, or do we need to do combinations of those things? And that's great, and it's an important conversation to have, but it ignores some of the more important aspects of getting your mobile strategy right. And I'll tell folks, you know what, in some ways, you can choose any of those technologies and be successful, or you can fail miserably, even if you do 100% native applications. And you'd fail because you don't build the right mobile moments, you haven't identified them, you haven't designed them properly, and most importantly, you really haven't measured the work that you've done to see what's working and what isn't, and you haven't built a process for continuous improvement of the mobile moments that you are creating. So I want to spend a little bit of time today talking about the front end and the back end of that extremely tight cycle process, the identification piece and the analysis piece today, because you've got to get those right if you want to be successful in the long term. So let's move on to the next slide. So when we think about identifying mobile moments, I've already kind of told you that you need to think about them as larger than just the actual phone or tablet itself. So you need to identify the points at which it is most likely that a customer is going to reach for their phone first or their tablet first. And I often recommend that folks engage in an exercise. They ask their customers, what do you do when you're not at home? The B2E version of that is, what does your employee want to do when they're not sitting in their cube or sitting in their office? And what you'll find is there's an awful lot of things. When folks are walking, when they're mobile, when they don't have 5 or 6 minutes to turn on a laptop and log in and find a Wi-Fi connection, and if their employees log into VPN, those are the times that they're going to reach out for these devices. So if you can start to identify that information, that's the first step. Then the second step to ask is, well, what other pieces of information do they need at that point in time in order to make a decision, in order to figure out what the next best action is? And that's where the value of context comes in. Now, you have to ask yourself, do we have the capability? Are we able to get that information, get that context to them in the mobile channel when it is a mobile moment, and are we able to service them in an immediate context? Now, if we move on to the next slide, that's important because often parts of that context are not going to be something that they have on their mobile device. Sure, they might have location. They might have the speed that they're moving, the direction that they're moving. They might have their local contact information in the contacts application. But you probably don't have the history of the maintenance of the products that they've purchased from you. They probably don't have the history of what products they've bought. They may know that, but you don't necessarily know that, and that information isn't on the device. They may have a scheduled appointment with you, and they may know that, but you need to know that. There may be extended information. I'll give you an example of that. If I'm traveling, I very much want to know if the plane that is coming into the gate that I'm about to get on and fly out on, I want to know if the inbound flight is late, because if the inbound flight is late, that means that my flight is very liable to be late as well. So that comes from a system of automation. So when you think about matching mobile moments up to the larger transaction that they are part of, you need to be able to harness context across your systems of engagement, your mobile devices, your tablets, your browser, your systems of record, the historical systems where you store information of past transactions, of past things that are part of the customer relationship. And you also need to be able to marshal the information from the extended systems of automation that are relevant to the contextual journey that the customer's on. If you can do that, you can start to think about how these mobile moments evolve around a particular interaction that a customer is going to have with you. Let's take an example. On the next slide, this is how Starbucks might design their mobile moments around a purchase in a Starbucks store, likely 2 or 3 blocks away from where you're listening to this right now. 5 minutes before that mobile moment, I might want to be finding where the nearest Starbucks is, and hopefully it only takes me 5 minutes to walk, but it could be an hour before or 2 hours before. I might want to check any messages that Starbucks has sent me in my email with weekly specials or coupons or that sort of thing, and that might not be on the mobile device at all if I'm sitting at my cube. But as we start to get 30 seconds before the purchase, the needs change. I want to make sure that I have balance on my digital card that is on my application on my phone to make sure that I can actually purchase my favorite culotta. I might need to reload that card if I don't have enough money on it by entering a credit card number, or if I have one on file, I'd need to go to that system of record, get that credit card information out, and authorize the reloading of my customer card. In the purchase event, I might want to have a barcode on my app scanned to confirm that that amount is going to be debited from my system. 30 seconds after the purchase, I need to be able to see my new balance. I need to be able to get a copy of my receipt, perhaps digitally. I might want to leave a tip for a barista, or check my email while I'm enjoying my coffee because I've got 5 or 10 minutes to sit down in the brick-and-mortar store. 5 minutes after the relationship, I might want to be able to check my loyalty status. I might want to be able to play a song or a game that's been offered to continue to increase brand engagement. Now, these mobile moments and the time leading up to them and the time after them can really add up. As an example, in Starbucks' case, they announced that their mobile app, which includes payment support and loyalty, was used by over 10 million customers. It had an average of 5 million weekly transactions in their stores. So a great cross-channel experience designed around a mobile moment, but designed to support the entire transaction across different channels. That's what you need to be focused on. So if we move on in terms of how you do that, the first step is to focus on shortening the distance between what your customers want, that was one of the first questions that you should be asking, and how you provide that to them, what you're actually giving to them, and are you providing utilitarian, easy-to-use experiences that close the distance between those two things. So that starts to get to how you know you're doing that, and can you measure the distance between what your customers want and what you are giving to them. And so that begs the question, if we can go to the next slide, on what do your customers want and how you measure that, and what do they actually get and how do you measure what you're giving them. And that's why the A part of the idea cycle is so critically important, because without analytics, without measurement, and without analysis, you're guessing, and your guess is as good as anybody else's. So how do we do this analysis part? If we move on to the next slide, you instrument your application. This has been one of the biggest changes that I've seen so many of our development shops have to come to speed with. Luckily, some folks that have come out of an e-commerce world or a web world were used to using analytics, but a lot of mobile teams aren't. So you need to instrument your mobile service or your application throughout the process. You need to instrument to detect the behavior of the customer, the outcome of that behavior, and also the performance of the transactions that your customers are engaging in, because often there's a direct correlation between the performance of the application and the financial benefits and outcomes of the application, if you have a product that has value to a large enough segment of customers. Once you've got that instrumentation done, you can then start to build insights about the technical performance, insights about how well you're engaging your customers and whether you've identified the right mobile moments, and insights that will allow you to predict what the financial outcomes are going to be. If you do it right, you'll be able to start to run tests in your application. You hear them called either A/B tests or multivariate tests, and the capability to do that very, very quickly, analyze the results, and then take action based on that is what's going to allow you to get into a virtuous cycle of continuous improvement that zeroes in on the right mobile moments for the right customer base and the right segments of your customer base as quickly as possible. To do this, you need to focus on that entire end-to-end transaction, not just what's happening on the mobile device, but what's happening on the systems that are connected to that mobile device, the systems of record and the systems of automation. So let's talk a little bit about where some of that information comes from. If we move on to the next slide, you can get that data directly from the customers, offering feedback management in your application. If there's something that they don't like, maybe they can pull up a screen and offer a complaint or a suggestion and have that information come straight back to your developers through your mobile infrastructure. App Store data is a really good example. If you're getting lots and lots of 2-star ratings, that's a pretty good indication that you haven't gotten your mobile moments right. Testing tools are a good place to get feedback, especially in terms of technical performance and the capabilities of an application. Feedback management tools, being able to run tests with beta versions of your application and get indications of how a more optimistic self-selecting portion of your customer population feels about the next potential version of your application and the changes that you have made to serve their mobile moments. Your infrastructure. This is one that mobile application development teams miss out on all the time. They instrument everything on the mobile client, but they don't instrument anything back in the existing systems of record, the infrastructure that connects them. And because of that, often there are problems that have nothing to do with what's on the mobile client that are creating real performance impacts and creating problems meeting top-line business objectives. So you should also, of course, measure your bottom-line business results as well, because in the end, we want these applications to drive increased top-line growth, to reduce the expenses and the costs of serving our customers, or to more tightly engage them with our brands. So those are the sorts of things that you need to articulate how you're going to measure. So if we look at some examples of the types of measures that you should be using, the first thing that I would encourage you to do is to think of these as a continuum. There are technical metrics, there are engagement metrics, and there are business metrics, but they build off of each other. So for example, if you have an application that's crashing frequently, guess what? Your monthly average user over daily average user metric at the engagement level is probably going to go down. That's probably going to impact your revenue. So the capability to detect things from the technical level all the way up to the business level are necessarily linked. Likewise, it's great to be able to look at this information from a historical perspective. What happened yesterday? What happened last week? What happened with this new group of users compared to a group of users that customers that we that downloaded our app 6 months ago? And are we doing better? But it's also important to be able to watch the applications in real time because guess what? Network conditions change, your infrastructure changes. If you're using public cloud infrastructure, an availability zone might be impacted, and you need to be able to make real-time decisions that deal with performance issues that then lead to lower engagement, that then lead to lower business metrics. Eventually, you also want to get to the capability to be able to change things in real time. If a customer walks in to a store and they order 5 minutes before walking into the store, they might want to be able to pick up their order right from the desk instead of having to wait in line for checkout. That's something that you can do. If you're gathering real-time location, speed, and proximity, you can essentially serve them and make the experience almost like it's magic. So let's talk a little bit about how you do this and where you look at putting these metrics in. If you're not doing customer journey maps, you absolutely should, because you're going to be able to use those journey maps as an input to start to look at how you might measure your mobile moments as part of an overall transaction. So, for example, you might want to measure initial downloads, because if a customer never downloads your app, it's pretty hard for them to get beyond the awareness stage. You might want to think real carefully about that first interaction and measure that to make sure that you're creating an experience that's going to make people load it for the second time. If you see that folks are switching out of your application and then coming back to it, maybe that's an indication that there's a performance problem or you're loading too many different things on first interaction, and you might want to look at the technical metrics underneath that around load times. If you see that there are places in your journey where customers tend to spend a lot of time with the application, that's an indication that they're finding it really valuable or that they're liking what they're doing. That's a great time to ask for a review, because you're probably going to get a 4 or a 5-star review, as opposed to on a screen where folks might be moving away from the application or closing the application or abandoning the shopping cart. In that case, you might want to say, well, why is that happening? Is it because our prices are too high? So let's run an A/B test around our pricing and see if that's the case. Is it because the order, when they hit the buy button, isn't processing correctly and it's frustrating them and making them leave? Do we have a specific problem on a version of Android or with a particular carrier? These are all the types of analytics that you need to be able to connect. Now, if you can do that, let's move on to the next slide. You set your development teams up for a situation where they can work at hyperspeed and do what I call hypothesis-driven development. They can set up a hypothesis, they can develop it, they can test it either in a beta format or actually test it with different communities of customers. They can look at the results, sense the results, and decide whether or not that test is a successful test or an unsuccessful test. Your capability to do that as fast as possible is directly related to how much work you can do and how quickly you can improve the experience of your application. Doing it successfully and putting tools and infrastructure in place that makes it possible is going to increase the flow rates of your development teams. It's going to make them much more successful, and it's part of a set of practices that we see companies that build 5-star, top-rated applications using to keep on top of their game and to keep those apps highly rated. So I just want to bring my section to a close here by offering some thought on all of this. So if we can move to the last slide here, mobile success. It's not just about building, really nice-looking mobile apps. It's also about identifying and designing the right mobile moments within the context of an entire transaction. Delivering those mobile moments requires a lot more than a nice native UI written in Objective-C or Java. It requires the right UI that provides the right information, that aggregates context across your existing systems and gets it to the customer as quickly as possible in their exact moment of need. If your mobile moment's not working, it could be because you don't have the right business context, but it could be because you don't have the right technical context, or you don't have the right level of engagement for what you're trying to do. So you need to look at all of those things together and correlate the results. If you cannot monitor the end-to-end transactions that are driven by your mobile moments and are made viewable by this analytic data, it's going to be awfully hard to get into that hypothesis-driven development cycle. But the good news is, once you do, and once you get it right, it's possible to rapidly, and I mean really rapidly, within the course of a couple months, dramatically improve your applications, your ratings, and your overall levels of customer engagement, which are the prerequisite to improving your bottom line business goals when it comes to working in the mobile world. So with that, I'd like to thank you. I'd like to pass things back to Rob to talk a little bit about how you start to connect some of these different items and measure them in a consistent way.
Great, thank you, Jeffrey. That was a great presentation. I wanted to go back to one of the slides that you presented early on, because I think this really captures the importance of what makes mobile so different. This concept of having mobile moments that are very fleeting, that you just have to get right. I mean, there's been so many times where I've been walking around the city, and I remembered to buy, I remember it was my girlfriend's birthday, and I had to buy something, and I pulled up Groupon's app, and I have literally a 2-minute transaction where I'm searching for a gift, and I have to buy it, and if they don't get that experience right, it can really mean the difference between not making a purchase and making a purchase. And if we really think about what a mobile moment is, it's really a successful transaction within a mobile app, whether that's buying something in Groupon's app, to loading Ameritrade and trying to buy a stock, or signing up for an account on Facebook, or logging into your Instagram account to log a photo. I mean, all these are examples of very fleeting, small moments of events. And what's interesting about them is they're very complex. They can involve multiple service calls to different APIs. They can involve multiple screens. And at any point, your phone could lose internet connectivity, and it can cause these transactions to fail. And there's so many different ways that these transactions cannot succeed. One example I just talked about was where you're trying to connect to an API to complete a purchase. That can cause something to fail. If you're on the run and you lose internet connectivity, or if you go into a crowded place and you switch from Wi-Fi to 3G, that can often cause transactions to fail. Or if the app crashes in the middle of a transaction because part of your code didn't execute well. And perhaps the most common is if something is taking too long in your app and your customer just gives up and times out. And so why is this so difficult? Why is it so complex? Well, if you look at the different permutations on mobile, everyone talks about device fragmentation on mobile. If you look at the numbers, there's over 2,500 different devices that an application can run on. And the same thing is true of operating systems. Even if you look at iOS, people don't talk about this a lot, but iOS has released on average about 1 update to their operating system every month. And in aggregate, that turns out to be over 100 different systems of mobile operating systems. And if you multiply this by the number of carriers that exist, as well as the number of cloud services that an application uses, you get over 100 million different permutations that you have to account for. And in other words, it's really 100 million different ways that your mobile moments can fail. So, how do we help with that? What we've been developing through the last 3 or 4 years is really a way to monitor all of these issues that can cause your mobile moments to fail. looking at devices, networks, APIs that can cause transactions to fail, and recognizing, what are the most common issues that occur in your mobile app, giving you the data to really prioritize those issues, look at the users that were affected, and let you slice and dice that data by location, by the version of the operating system, by the types of devices being impacted. And then giving you the data to go ahead and troubleshoot those issues, allowing you to iterate fast and create updates to your app that fix all those issues right away. And then going back and giving you kind of a high-level view of how these metrics are trending over time. How well are my apps doing with each release of my application? Are they hitting our performance goals? And are those performance goals allowing us to hit our business metrics as well? And so what we wanted to do today was give you a sneak peek into our mobile transaction management product, which we'll be releasing in the next couple of days. And really this is a first in our industry, being able to track these types of transactions in the context of a mobile application and these fleeting moments in our application. And giving you the flexibility to define what transactions you want to monitor in your application and how these affect the business metrics in your application that you're tracking. And what we've done is built this platform on top of our existing solution, being able to tie our current operational metrics, which we've iterated on in the last 3 years, and tie those back into the business metrics that you want to be tracking. So with that, let me jump to a quick demo and give you some insight into what our product, how our product will work. So let me switch over to our product here. So let me zoom in. So this product really allows you to look at all the transactions in your app and tie those back to the business metrics that you're tracking. So let's suppose in this case, you've just released an update to your app in the App Store and you want to know how it's doing. You might get an alert that says there's been a problem since the latest update to your app, and so this is the dashboard you would be looking at to see how well my application is doing. You can see some high-level metrics here on the top left side of the page. We allow you to tie all these transactions back to revenue in your app. And so what you're seeing here for revenue risk is really the sum of the value of each transaction that has failed, whether that's due to a crash, due to a timeout, due to a user boarding that transaction. And you can see here that there's been a huge increase in this revenue risk figure for your app. And it corresponds, if we look at this graph here on the right, we can see it corresponds to the last 10 minutes of your application. So with the latest update of your app, maybe there's something going on. And if you hover over the graph here of the top 5 failed transactions, you can actually see that the checkout transaction, there's been a spike in the failure rate of that transaction. So maybe that's something we need to look at. And correspondingly, you can see that there's been a huge decrease in the success rate across all my transactions as well. If we scroll down to the bottom of the page, we show a breakdown of all the transactions that you're currently tracking in your app. So it could be anything from checkout to viewing a billing page to how long it takes for my app to load. Right now, it's sorted by volume, but let's go ahead and sort this by revenue risk. And you can see again here, the checkout transaction has seen a huge increase in the revenue risk of the app. So maybe that's something we need to look at. So let's drill down into that checkout transaction. So looking at the checkout transaction specifically, we can see that there's been, again, a huge decrease in the success rate of my app. If we look at the graph here on the right, we can see that there's been a corresponding drop in the last 10 minutes here as well. The slow rate, this is the percentage of transactions that took longer than expected, hasn't really changed too much. And really, there's really been something around this transaction failing. So, and we can tell, what the impact is right away to revenue in my app. You can tell, the average risk in my app as well as the total revenue risk in my app has gone up significantly. And again, it's been across the last 10 minutes. So what caused this transaction to fail? We break down all the different ways a transaction can fail here in the failure metrics section. So you can see, what percentage of my transactions were aborted because the user couldn't complete that transaction, how many of them timed out, as well as how many of them failed due to a crash. And we can see here the huge spike in the red here in this graph shows that there's been an increase in the crashes in my application. So let's go ahead and scroll down to the root cause analysis screen to see, you know, which of those crashes were impacting my app. And you can see right here, we can sort this list by the number of crashes that occurred, and we can see all the code-level defects that were causing this particular transaction to fail. And if we click on this top crash here, this ties back into our current platform. You know, we can see the exact stack trace that shows the exact file and line of code that caused this transaction to fail, as well as drill into diagnostics. So we can tell, you know, what was the memory usage at the time of failure, what operating system, what app version was it running on, you know, what carrier was this app running on that caused it to fail. And maybe that it might be surprising for the user. It might be that the stack trace shows a line of code that they had, you know, complete test coverage for, and so we really want to go back and drill into, on a per user basis, you know, what was going on with that user. So let's jump back into the transaction screen. If we go to the transaction trace tab here, we show on a per user basis all the actions, all the events that led up to a failed transaction. And we can go ahead and sort this by revenue and risk, allowing you to prioritize all the users that had the biggest impact on revenue, all of your most important users. And we show, you know, a timeline of all these events that occurred leading up to a transaction failing. And we highlight all the events that caused, that were worrisome. So we can tell in this case, you know, this user switched from a fast LTE connection to Edge, slowing down their network connectivity dramatically. They clicked on the store and they called an API to get a list of inventory. And we can see that this specific network request took about 3 seconds to complete, which is something that they should look into. If you actually click on this URL, it would take you back into our product, and you can see, you know, what was causing that specific latency. And luckily, that user, you know, continued on. They added something to the shopping cart. At that point, the connectivity took a turn for the worse. They tried switching to Wi-Fi, that failed, and then they ended up losing connectivity completely. So when they tried to check out in the app, that transaction, that network request actually failed, and that subsequently caused that application to crash. And so they can look at this data and immediately see that that's something that they need to fix. They need to look into hardening that code that checks out, that throws, you know, tries to check out in their application. And maybe it doesn't account for that the application lost internet connectivity. But instead of gracefully failing, it actually caused the application to crash completely. So that's a little preview into the transaction product that we'll be coming out with in the next couple days. Let me switch back to the presentation. And so just to summarize, you know, we talked a little bit about the importance of these mobile moments and applications and being able to monitor how these are performing. You know, if we really look at these mobile moments, they're really transactions and apps. And they can happen in any sort of context, and they have, you know, and often they're very complex. They involve multiple service requests, multiple screens, and they can fail because of a multitude of reasons. Maybe your application loses internet, maybe something takes too long, maybe your user gives up on that transaction completely. And so with our new transaction monitoring product, we're allowing you to tie our current operational analytics back to how they impact your mobile business. So with that, I wanted to open it up to any questions from the audience.
Great. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Jeffrey. We've got a number of questions that have come in, and we're going to try to get to as many as possible. First things first, a number of people have asked, yes, the webinar is being recorded, and we'll be sending out the video on demand early next week to all the attendees and registrants. First one is to Jeffrey, and says, Jeffrey, can you talk about how Apple's handoff will impact these mobile moments, likely making them more impactful?
Sure, happy to do that. Handoff is the information model that's underneath what's called continuity, which is coming up in the Yosemite release of OS X and also in iOS 8. It's essentially, think of it as a set of SDKs or capabilities that allow you to build that common information model that sits in the public cloud, in this case within Apple's iCloud services. Google has a capability that's very similar, maybe a little bit less vast with Cloud Save, but it is a shared state model that you can use and don't have to build on your own. You know, like if the Evernote guys did when they essentially built automatic synchronization into their apps. So, you know, if anything, it's going to make it easier for you to engage in synchronization of information and hopefully context across different devices. I think there'll still be work that you'll have to do where there are specific pieces of context from different devices, like an accelerometer. You might not have that on every device, and there may be points in times when you want to use that data. But where the context is consistent across different devices, you know, I think it would be really a useful feature to make it easier to integrate mobile moments into an overall transaction and not have to build that sort of capability yourself. So I look at it as an advancement. You know, would like to see things be more than just for a certain, you know, specific set of platforms, because the reality is not everybody has all Apple devices or all Google devices, and you know, this is an area that we see some mobile back end of the services players working on as well. But you know, shared state is certainly one of those important capabilities that you need to really deliver that end-to-end cross-device omni-channel engagement that includes mobile devices.
Awesome, great, thanks, Jeffrey. And someone very quickly asked a question about BDI.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what the acronym stands for. You know,
Us either. Yeah.
BDI, but
another one for Jeffrey. We have a broad range of users for our mobile apps. How does this affect the way we design and measure the way it works?
Well, you know, the key there is broad. If it's a broad base of users, then my guess is there might be discrete user segments. So one of the things to start thinking about is using your measurements to start to identify different sets of behaviors across segments of your users, or your customers or employees, depending on who you're working with. You know, one of the things that I often see is folks will say, well, who are our loyalists? That's a fairly typical, you know, somewhat generic persona, the folks that tend to be the most engaged with us, that tend to buy the most from us. And how are those loyalists different than first-time users? And what happens to convert a first-time user into a loyalist? You know, and so the broader your user base, the more I would encourage you to try to segment the data that you're getting from your measurements to try to see where the clumps of behaviors are, try to understand the differences between them, and try to understand what causes somebody to migrate from one persona to another. And that should give you some clues as to how you engage and how you might even alter the experience for those different user segments. It might help you decide how you're going to invest in new features. Hopefully you're building lots of features in for your loyalists, but you're also building some features in that are going to help with the conversion of first-time users or casual customers into loyalists. And these are the kinds of things that you can use big data tools to analyze and lots of different the algorithms to identify segments using a segmentation analysis or a variety of different tools.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeffrey. This one looks like it's for Rob. Rob, do transactions only make sense for consumer-focused apps?
Yeah, that's a great question. In our experience, mobile transactions are just as important for B2C applications as well as B2E applications. If you take a company like Urban Outfitters, who has moved all of their point-of-sale devices to iPads. In all those cases, it's a very B2E case, but that transaction is highly important for them to track how often these transactions are failing in apps. Or if you take a company like TDC, one of the largest telecom providers in Europe, they use a lot of their applications for field force enablement, and a lot of their employees are using these apps to make purchases for customers And anytime these transactions fail is immensely important for those companies as well. So I see, you know, transactions applying across the board for both B2C as well as B2E use cases.
Rob, I'll add another area. We're seeing a lot of companies invest in what I would call side-by-side selling business processes around tablets. And, you know, I would certainly think that you would want to actually be able to kind of look at how that selling process is actually working, and if there are specific problems where, you know, either a specific region or a specific sales team or even a specific individual is just not able to use it the way that it was conceived, or that you haven't gotten the sales flow right. I think it's a good way to identify potential problems in the selling process in that case.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. And we've seen, you know, location really play into a lot of transactions failing so far. You know, we've had cases where an app has launched a company has launched their application in the U.S., everything was fine, and once they launched in China, for example, you know, China's firewall has caused downtime in a lot of companies' apps. You know, we've seen carriers also cause a lot of issues as well. We've seen carriers blocking billing endpoints and applications, or for media companies, you know, shaping packets and trying to, you know, convert PNGs to JPEGs, and that causing a lot of transactions to fail as well.
Great. Back to Jeffrey again. Jeffrey, why can't we just extend our web analytics framework to our mobile app?
You know, certainly, you know, web analytics products gather a lot of information, but often they're not really designed to capture the kind of information, the context, if you will, that's available on a mobile device. Things like the direction, things like GPS coordinates, things like battery usage, and how much space you're using and how much bandwidth you're using. So I really think that it's important to supplement what you might be doing in the web space with products that are really designed to capture the richness of the information, the context that's available on the mobile platform.
Great. I think this one is more for Rob. How many calls were placed into the application code to capture the granularity of the user experience you demonstrated today? It seems like a lot more granularity than I've seen to date with your product.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, you know, I think one of the areas we've been trying to iterate on is to make sure that we can capture as much data as possible without requiring our users to add additional code to your app. So, you know, that's why we came out with app wrapping earlier in the year, being able to instrument an app without having to add any code at all. A lot of what I showed on the transaction trace, where you can see changes to network state, you know, if I showed it moved from LTE to 3G, you know, a screen, how long it took for a screen to load, all of those were actually done automatically without actually adding any additional code to your app. And, you know, we're still looking for additional ways to automatically instrument as much as possible. And, you know, we're starting with the most, you know, pressing events that have caused transactions to fail in the past. So changes to network state, application background, foreground, and views changing. Those are the types of events we're actually going to start automatically tracking without adding any additional code.
Great. Thanks, Rob. Jeffrey, another user asks, which KPIs are the most important to consider at mobile e-commerce analysis?
Oh boy, I think you'd have to look at the different levels. In my research, monthly average user over daily average user is one that has come up again and again because it tends to indicate the amount of engagement. And, you know, every engagement is a potential for conversion or enrichment, so I'd probably single that one out as well. I think to some extent the most important metrics are the ones that are designed around your business. So if you know, you're selling discrete items, then, you know, average cart price is really important, and what you can do to increase that. If you only sell a couple items but they're very high touch, then, you know, that's probably not as important. If you know, you're selling If you're in the hotel business and you're selling room nights, then the overall average sale price of a room is probably the most important metric. And if you can increase that by being able to anticipate the level of need of a customer, or their loyalty level because they're a gold member or a platinum member, then that would be a metric that I'd focus on. But certainly monthly average user over daily average users, I think, is a good one. From a technical perspective, I think you really want to zero in on crash reports right from the start, because in general, there's no two ways about it. Crashes are bad, and the fewer crashes you can have, the quicker you can get on with the higher level engagement measurements.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. We're getting late on time. One more for Jeffrey. It seems like these changes would result in a lot more app releases. How often should we plan to release changes to apps?
Well, I can tell you that the research that I've done around applications that are very highly rated, most of those teams release 8 to 12 times a year, and that rate is increasing as opposed to decreasing. You don't want to kind of say, well, let's just do it every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks. You'd like to be able to release every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks, but then choose whether or not you do based on whether you've got new functionality. If you got a 4-star rating and people are happy, then go long, continue to work, continue to put new features in. But if you start to see a dip because a competitor's application came out with a new feature that you don't match, or that folks just don't think what you do is as cool as it used to be, you want to be able to immediately go out the door. You want to be able to immediately react to the results of a test. So I would say we would like to aspire to being able to release every 2 weeks, maybe even more frequently, even if that means that in actuality you only release 8 to 12 times a year.
Great info. Thanks, Jeffrey. We're going to wrap it up with Rob. There's a quick question or two. Someone asked Rob, how does this solution compare to solutions like Google Analytics? They are focused on user information and marketing funnel. We focus on performance and its impact in app and its revenues.
That's a great question. That's a question we actually get a lot. So we actually work, I think, complementary to a lot of these, behavioral analytics companies like Google Analytics, like Mixpanel, like Localytics. And, really what those companies are focused on is kind of the behavioral side of things. So which, features are customers using the most? What do their marketing funnels look like? And we're really on the more performance side. So how do your performance metrics tie back to revenue in your applications?
Great. And I have one question that was asked about 30 times. When will this solution be available?
Great question. So we're releasing this product in the next couple days. Actually, if you have a criticism.com account, we'll be sending an email with a sign-up form in the next few days. So if you don't have one, sign up for an account, and we'll send you an email to sign up for the beta. Great,
thanks. Okay, we promised to keep this at about 15 minutes, and we're just about there now. Unfortunately, there was a lot of questions we couldn't get to. For those of you that submitted a question that we didn't get to answer, we'll reply directly back to you. And again, to contact us, please visit our website, criticism.com, or email us at sales@criticism.com. And now I'd like to thank both Jeffrey and Rob for their time today, and we'd like to thank everyone that attended the webinar. Have a great day.